Policy Matters is a conversation platform which aims to provide reasoned analysis and context to the activities, reforms, and policies of the federal government of Ethiopia. Exploring various reforms the government is undertaking, the conversation platform aspires to enable nuanced and informed understanding.
Welcome to Policy Matters. Today we're sitting with Dr. Eyob Tekalegn, State Minister of Finance. We're going to be talking about the new policy regulations, policy changes in the telecom space. It's going to be a very exciting conversation. Dr. Eyob, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to this conversation with you.
Thank you for having me, Adis.
Obviously, today we're talking about the telecom opportunity here in Ethiopia and the current movement in that space. I wanted to ask the first question in regards to the privatization process with Ethio Telecom, as well as the liberalization with the two new licenses. Why now?
A very interesting question to start with. Why now? But if you allow me, I'd love to start a little bit, 2-3 years down the road, where the thinking about the overall political, economic, and social reform was in the making. You've been here, you saw the kind of sweeping change Prime Minister Abiy has introduced after he came to power. On the economic front, there are some critical directional issues that needed to be addressed. Where do we want to take this economy? Should we continue business as usual, or should we change course, but without actually disrupting all the gains that we have accumulated over the last 10-15 years? So we chose the latter, right? And then as part of that, the homegrown economic reform agenda was developed. As part of that economic reform agenda, in fact, I might say at the heart of it was this notion that Ethiopia should take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution. We should go digital. Digital economy should not only be a new source of growth and industry in and of itself, but it should be a catalytic force for the rest of the economy. There was a saying that we should have done much more in agriculture, in manufacturing, in services. But this, when supported by meaningful digital transformation, the sense was the sky was the limit. So telecom reform became one of the most important reform areas for the government. But how do we approach it was the question, right? I mean, before the change, you might recall there's an EPRDF Central Committee, Executive Committee has decided that critical state-owned enterprises should be privatized. So should we just take that card and talk about privatization of Ethio Telecom like other assets, or should we take a more sector-wide approach? We chose the latter. And then in that sector-wide approach, the question of what is the structure of the Ethiopian economy? What kind of telecom sector do we need to build? Should we follow an example of countries that have just privatized the incumbent, at times faced catastrophic failures? Or should we just open up the sector, brutal liberalization, and then leave Ethio Telecom for competition without any preparation? Or should we follow a process whereby we can achieve both goals? We can create a world-class telecom industry by, one, strengthening the incumbent, but allowing competition. So this is what we have chosen. We said we should really adopt a more simultaneous approach where we can privatize and also liberalize in a synchronized manner simultaneously.
So having said that, I mean, as you know, Ethiopia was probably the first country on the continent to have a telephone. We're the founding member of the ITU. I believe we're late in the game in terms of this space. So this is quite a game changer for the country, for the youth, for the economy. It's transformational, truly. The question being, doing it both at the same time, both the privatization of Ethio Telecom as well as letting 2 new operators come in. Don't you think that's too much to bite at the same time?
Yeah, in a way you're right. I mean, it's a phenomenal undertaking. It's a big operation, so I'm not going to mince words on that. But it depends on what you want to achieve. You've said it right. You said 100 years and counting, but we are lagging behind. The kind of frustration we all have been feeling, you included. I remember you talking about the IT sector discussed on the sidelines as if it's non-important. I remember you mocking about, the government focusing on exports in sacks only. I remember those conversations. So I think you don't blame us if you get excited about the possibilities of a once in lifetime profound reform that you need to undertake. It might take a toll on you. It could be tough, but you gotta do it. But most importantly, because the reform had clear objectives, you want to make sure whatever you do would help you achieve those objectives, right? I mean, we've defined very clear objectives. We said, 1, digital transformation is at the core of the economic reform agenda. And for this, you need to build a world-class telecom industry. And you have significant infrastructure and service expansion goals that you've set. And maybe you can call it the 4th objective. You also have to make sure that whatever you extract from this sector is maximized, because you said it's once in a lifetime opportunity. So if you weigh in the pros and cons of just going into privatization and coming back to opening up sector 3-4 years down the road, or leaving Ethio Telecom as is and opening up the sector, I bet you we won't be able to achieve those objectives. Let me break it down for you. Look at what a synchronized, simultaneous approach would give you. First of all, it makes it much easier to build a world-class telecom industry, as you said. For one thing, you are giving Ethio Telecom an opportunity to transform itself quickly. Look where the incumbent had been 2 years before and where it is now. We're not talking about an incumbent that just talks about being 100 years old, but now we're talking about an incumbent that has transformed itself, has found its voice really in the telecom industry, and is getting ready for competition with global giants, right? And second, if you want to maximize the value you can generate from this sector, yes, you could get maybe a penny more by doing one from that one exercise, say from privatization, or you could get a penny more by selling licenses if you don't do privatization. But if you look on average, in the short-term and the long-term gains of doing this simultaneously, you will see that the nation would maximize significant benefits by doing it simultaneously. In the short term, of course, the value you extract from the sales of license and the privatization process would be significantly higher. But also in the medium and long term, whether you talk about the tax base or whether you talk the economic impact that competition, a dynamic telecom industry engender, then you would see that we are at the right track. But also, if you look at what we wanted to get out of the telecom reform, we thought digital economy would be at the forefront, and we've identified pathways for this, right? Pathways in agriculture, pathways in manufacturing, pathways in IC sector. So when you have a dynamic competitive industry where there are 2-3 players, where there is significant expansion in infrastructure and service coverage, in quality of services, achieving those economy-wide activities would be much easier when you do it at one go than when you do one now and leave the rest for 2-3 years down the road. So, I mean, overall, yes, this is a huge enterprise. yes, it takes a huge toll on us, but it's also so important, so critical for the future of this country that it was worth doing it this way. And so far we feel we're doing okay. I think we're managing the whole process pretty well. I mean, I'll leave it to you what your thoughts are, but I think from inside the government, that is our view.
Okay. In regards to the process itself, there's two critical questions, maybe three critical questions in terms of the process. So yes, the regulation has been set, the ECA has been established, we have a full-fledged office now, the tender is out, Ethio Telecom is going through its own process of getting ready for the privatization. But at the same time, the question of fintech is obviously coming up. The fact that Ethio Telecom currently now, at this time, has eventually, a license to provide fintech space and mobile money space, whereas the two new entry MNOs wouldn't have that same privilege. That's one. The second issue is obviously the issue of infrastructure, specifically towercos and other infrastructure. The fact that the incumbents have been given the mandate that they can build, but they can't have third-party infrastructure partners coming to operate in Ethiopia. How would you explain that to the general public in terms of the decision behind that, and how you see the process around that specifically?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very tough policy agenda, and as you can imagine, it went through a series of policy discussions and deliberations, understanding the dynamics of the industry, what we have, what we lack, and so on. So on the infrastructure issue, clearly, when the market structure is defined, two important decisions that were made. One, we need to establish an independent regulator, ECA as we said, a regulator that can independently manage the incumbent and the new entrants. So that can create a vibrant, competitive telecom industry and see as a fair arbiter. But with that, another decision was, because the incumbent has significant infrastructure, if the new entrants would like to probably use Ethio Telecom's infrastructure, and they would, how do you make sure they have access to it, fair access to it, compared to Ethio Telecom? And that required a decision of separating Ethio Telecom into two, functionally. And of course, there are different options that were on the table, like should we do a strong separation, like create two different companies? But the most sensible one, based on different country experiences, was to do what they call soft separation, where you have an accounting and functional separation. In a way, you see Ethio Telecom, but now that company has two distinct branches, like Ethiopian Airlines, where you have the cargo wing and the passenger wing and the catering wing and so on. So as part of that exercise, what came out was there is significant investment in infrastructure in this country. 25,000-30,000 fiber optics, buried underground or on EEP's lines, and a number of towers powered everywhere. I mean, they might need some enhancement, but significant infrastructure. So if you were a new entrant, would you rather use an existing infrastructure without significantly spending additional amount of investment, the OPEX and the CAPEX of this, you can imagine, or would you use existing infrastructure and then build on remaining part of the country? If you look at it strictly in business sense, if you are assured that the new entrants and the incumbent would have equal access to this infrastructure, and that there would be fair pricing, and that the ECA can regulate this properly, of course, you would want to put in more money into infrastructure when one is already available. So, and also as a country, I think it makes sense to make sure the billions that we've spent into this is put into meaningful use. And that is where the decision of creating that strong Chinese wall between Ethio Telecom service and Ethio Telecom infrastructure came about, and then the new entrants were encouraged to look at this opportunity. Now that we have started the actual bid process, the new entrants are having one-on-one with Ethio Telecom, having discussions with ECA. What I'm sensing is they are surprised to see that there are good infrastructure out here. If properly managed, if enhanced, then it can be put to proper use. But this does not mean additional infrastructure investment is not required. We do require that, and the new entrants have the license to invest in infrastructure in areas where they deem necessary. On the fintech issue, you're referring to mobile money. Look, we operate under the current legal framework. As you know, we've made significant reforms in the economy. One area that we've not opened up as of now is the banking sector. So the banking sector, as we speak today at this, is close to foreign investment. But would it be the same in 2 years, in 6 years down the road? I don't know, but I have my doubts, because the kind of reform we make depends on what the economy needed. At this point, we felt the financial sector reform needs to pass through different stages of reform before we fully open up the financial sector. But the one that opens, of course, it will be open for all operators. But as of now, under the Ethiopian legal regime, it's not open for foreign investment.
Okay. In regards to the since we're talking about the process that's already started, the next question for me would be, where do you see the opportunity for Ethiopian nationals and diaspora Ethiopians to take part in this opportunity? Because I personally believe this is the chance of a lifetime. This is a brand new sector that's about to be opened up for anybody that wants to invest and take part in. I personally don't believe that the Ethiopian corporate world and business world understands what the opportunity is. And in the local sense, the kids that have the money, or the kids that have the ideas, don't have the money, and the people that have the money usually don't have any relations to what's going on in terms of the ICT side and the opportunity that's about to happen for local business people and local people that want to get in. How do you see the government support that, whether it's in terms of policy, whether it's in terms of finance, however it may be? Because I look at this specific opportunity opening up thousands of job opportunities, whether it's in engineering, whether it's in outsourcing services. There's a ton of services that will be needed by both the incumbent as well as the new entrants. And I don't believe that's been highlighted to the business community in general, locally as well as outside. And I want to know what the government is looking at that.
Oh, I cannot agree anymore at this. Look, I think we are stuck in discussing high-level policy issues, processes, and so on, that we've lost sight of the most important agenda, why we have started the whole reform in the first place. The telecom reform provides unparalleled opportunities for the locals, for Ethiopian youth. Look, we are graduating hundreds of thousands of kids from the university every year. And we have specifically STEM graduates that are good at math and science, that when they get opportunity, will be making significant amount of money elsewhere, working for high-tech companies. But here, because we've not highlighted this opportunity, and because the overall policy environment did not allow it, the opportunity that this brings for Ethiopians was not properly promoted. We need to change this. And this is a time for Ethiopians to really see this opportunity. So you said, for instance, imagine the kind of telecom industry would have the next 5-10 years down the road. I mean, now look at internet penetration. Telecom has done a wonderful job, by significantly expanding mobile services, including internet services. But as of now, we're talking about social media usage, not the e-commerce aspect of it. We're not talking how kids who have a business notion can pull out significant amount of solution for the disrupted market structure we have in this country, or the engineers that have been working for Ethio Telecom, for EP, or that are being trained, could come out and set up the next big outsourcing facility, or they could build up data centers and provide that, or they could provide different value-added services. So it's an enormous opportunity that is ahead of us. But this needs to be highlighted. This needs to be discussed. And also our youth need to prepare for it. Groups themselves, at times, there will be some policy hurdles. The other week, I think a couple of weeks ago, I met a few engineers that have been in the telecom sector for 2-3 decades. I think they have a combined 60-70 years of experience. But they complain about some critical policy challenge that we need to resolve as government so that they can jump into the wagon. And we're ready to solve this, because the whole reform, the success of this depends on us doing this. But I think equally importantly, something that we need to underline is for the Ethiopian public at large as well, this is creating new investment opportunities. With the capital market coming up, Ethio Telecom, even before it's getting listed, we're working on a structure whereby the Ethiopian public can buy shares into Ethio Telecom. But this could continue for others as well once we go into the capital market. So yeah, big opportunities, but we need to promote this. We need to highlight this. And also the private sector needs to get ready for it. We need to underline that everything depends on this. Whatever we talk about, the transformation of the economy hinges on the success of the telecom sector reform and on how we take advantage of it.
Thank you for that. I mean, for me personally, I believe the opportunities are immense, even with the current infrastructure as is. I think for the first time ever, like you said, as of 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe it's because our Prime Minister is very comfortable with technology and that's his background. I believe that the word digital has come into the vocabulary of the Ethiopian government for the first time ever, which has been a positive. Last weekend, we launched the website for the Ministry of Trade, where you can finally register your company online.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, I think
the way I see it, the interaction between government, private sector, and citizens is being transformed now because of digital transformation. It's a new way of interaction. E-commerce, I mean, I'm sorry for cutting short, but you're talking about the OTRLS. Imagine the frustration that went into registering a name, the days you spend going to Ministry of Trade and customs. You pointed out this, right? But last year we've launched e-customs that has now transformed our customs clearance and international trade. Yeah, so absolutely. I don't think you get a better timing for Ethiopia than this, because this is at the heart of the whole reform, and the Prime Minister sees this as one of his signature initiatives. He thinks digital. He thinks Ethiopia needs to go to digital. He feels we've squandered opportunities in the past, and we need to make sure we seize the opportunity at this point in time.
So having said that, let me ask you this. Since you represent technically the Ministry of Finance, so I'm going to put this question to you. Previously, when the government came up with initiatives to move a sector forward, there was resource behind it, right? So remember 10, 15 years ago, we said horticulture is what we're going to get into. Development Bank had resources allocated for that, for both local investors as well as foreign. We said we were going to get into the textile and garment industry, leather industry. We spent a huge amount of resource on that, the industry parks, so forth and so on. what are you looking at when it comes to this sector, the telecom sector? Is there going to be resources allocated, either from the sale of Ethio Telecom's privatization and or from the sale of the 2 licenses, something that's allocated for local young Ethiopians to tap into, to be able to get into this sector? Because being a telecom engineer is one thing, having the resources to open that company to provide the service is another. So would this be something that the government is looking at in terms of encouraging local entrepreneurship, specifically in the telecom space?
No, you brought in a very interesting question. There is this thing in our 10-year plan, the homegrown economic reform agenda as well, this notion that Ethiopia is going to be a startup nation. And we mean this in all sense of the word, because you see it. There are these brilliant kids that have just been thinking about ideas but did not have the chance to exercise it out. If you go to EIPO, the Intellectual Property Office, you'd see files of intellectual property documents that were just shelved, patented, but have not been acted upon. If we have to make a difference in Ethiopian economy, the most important thing we must do is to make sure ideas are properly financed for execution. That's what we've been lacking in this country. We have the banking system that relies largely on overly collateralized lending processes, and that leaves out brilliant ideas. So then they never get tried. So absolutely, I think this is the direction. Ethiopia has to be a startup nation. Kids with idea needs to have access to finance. Not only the ordinary banking sector, but I think as we set up the capital market, one of the most important things that would do is I think it would mobilize resources from unproductive activities into more productive and rewarding activities. Yeah, we need to have a different approach to this, and we are ready to do that.
So final question for you. Where do you see us 5 years from now? I grew up in Kenya, so for me, I hope at least to be able to catch up, if not pass my Kenyan brothers and sisters in terms of our IT ability, our infrastructure, and just the overall digital economy. And how, from the 100% of the economy, how much of it is going to be a digital side?
Look, I don't know if you got a chance to look at the 10-year plan. Before I mention that, I'm sure you've noticed in all our policy documents, Digital Ethiopia is at the center of it, in the homegrown economic reform agenda, and we have a separate Digital Ethiopia 2025, strategy that takes Ethiopia digitally forward. But also there are clear, concrete plans in our 10-year plan. We're talking about 5.6 millions of jobs in innovation and technology. That is the kind of vision we are. We're thinking of government services that are probably digital are about 2% now, but about 85% of this to be digital in the coming 10 years. We're talking about the internet penetration that is about 18-20% now, to climb to almost 100%. So what we are imagining is an Ethiopia whereby at every corner you can think of an e-commerce business. Kids in the remote Walaita village could think of how to set up an e-commerce shop and pack and send bananas out, or kids in Guragedon doing that, or kids in some Walaga or Sidama area packing and shipping specialty coffee. This is the kind of vision we have for Ethiopia. So as this reform succeeds, Ethiopia's transformation would be realized. When the Prime Minister says Ethiopia is going digital, Ethiopia is going digital. There is no if and buts about it. I think we have thought about all the building blocks. It's not just a mere talk. You remember 15, 20 years ago talking about ICT, hubs, in fact, outsourcings, but all in frustration because we've not thought out all critical elements of it. But this time around, we've thought out about the critical building blocks, all under implementation. We've set up the right strategy, and you have a government that is fully committed to it and that actually thinks it's the most important legacy this administration would leave for Ethiopia. So that is where I hope we'd head in 10 years from now. The entire interaction between government, private sector and citizens would transform in a meaningful way thanks to this reform, which you said is heavy, tough, but that we are undertaking now. And I hope our kids would tap us back in 10 years and say, glad you guys have taught this 10 years before.
Thank you, Dr. Eyob, for giving us the time. This was a very, very fruitful conversation. Just like you said, I think we both have young kids, so I look forward to both our kids enjoying the benefit of this strategy and this policy and these changes that are about to happen. For myself personally, I'm very involved in the startup scene, so I know the kids that I work with are very excited about what's about to happen. So I think 6 months from now, this country will change and it will change forever. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you.